this episode of Growing Your Sense of Self Through Self-Defense, I'm going to talk about key ingredient for building a high-performance team in the work environment. About 20, 30 years ago or so, there was this dramatic and welcomed decentralization of decision-making in the corporate world. And managers, first and second line managers, became more facilitators and maybe dictators. The people who were close to the ground, the daily guys who do the job daily, the grunts, the worker bees, I use that term affectionately because that's what I am, had this more empowerment and the freedom to choose what they're going to be doing, who they're going to do it with, where, when, how, as long as it fit within the plan set up by the business, by the management, upper management, and the business owners. And management saw this, around the same time, they're all related, they saw, or they adhering to Aristotle's maxim of the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. They saw value in focusing on teams and building teams to do work that might have been done sort of individually or in departments, which aren't really teams, they're just groups. So there was that push towards team. And from a business perspective, if the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, that's a greater return on investment, so that's a positive thing from the business perspective. So this greater freedom, greater power that came down to the teams and the individuals on the teams, that comes with a greater responsibility. So the team members and the management began to focus on what it is to build effective teams, or grow teams that were more highly effective or maximally effective. And there was organizational shifts, and there was new processes put into place, and a plethora of books and coaching and programs and coursework came along to supplement this desire, or to meet the desire to have more highly effective teams. Now, if you think about what a person brings to the team, it sort of falls in two categories. One is sort of the subject matter expertise. So that's like your technical skills that are related to what your job is, their knowledge, your experience. And those things can be grown. We do those stuff like all the time in our lives. Maybe not all the time, but we have done those a lot of times in our lives. So for instance, a musician will pick up a new piece of music or a new instrument and learn to play it. Or a software developer will pick a new language or some new coding tool and become experienced with those. Or somebody gets their new smartphone with some new features on it and they learn the new features and become competent with those. So we learn these, we become subject matter experts in a lot of things over the course of our lives. That's not new news, and especially when it's something related to what you're doing, like the examples that I give. But the other category in which people bring to being a team member is their personal characteristics or personal skills. Soft skills are sometimes referred to. And these are much harder to grow if you find a shortness in one of them to get it stronger. So let me give us a few examples. Excuse me. You could think about yourself if you say, well, that really applies to me, or somebody that you know and say, yeah, they're that way. Or they're not that way, and they maybe like to get that way, or I'm not that way, I like to get that way. And think of what it would take to become more of these things. Open. Right, if you're very shy or sort of secretive, to become more open. Respectful. If you know people who are not respectful, what's the path from there to become respectful? It's not so straightforward as learn a new piece of music. Courageous. Ability to sort of tell somebody something that's not going to be pleasant for them to hear. Bad news, bearer of bad news. It takes a courage to do that. A lot of times we leave those aside. Commitment and focus. These 5 traits, these qualities, are identified by the author Lissa Atkins in her book, Coaching Agile Teams. They're identified as the nutrients, the key nutrients in the soil from which grows what he calls the high performance tree. So without those nutrients, the tree can't grow. You can't have a high performance team. So bringing in people or having people on a team that lacking those, and if you think about it, how would I go about getting those? Not easily attained. That's a barrier to overcome. It's not easily overcome. But I suggest that there's more traits, more personal qualities that Ms. Atkins did not mention in her book. And think about these in terms of a team. How important are these for a team to be effective? Honesty. How important is that for a team member? That you care about others. You're willing to accept responsibility when things don't go so well. That you trust in others. Understanding. Show gratitude. Give credit to others. You're inquisitive. Creative. And you're a good listener. Those are also very important traits in a person to bring to a team, to enable a team to become highly effective. And this list of traits, every one of them, are traits of a person with a strong sense of self. And they're lacking to various degrees in a person with a low sense of self. So the vital ingredient, these are all nutrients in that soil. The vital ingredient for a person to bring to a team, to bring value to that team, is to come into that team, or while on that team grow, the strength of their sense of self. And all these traits come along. This is the harder stuff to grow than the subject matter expert skills. Let's think about that. So imagine a team where you had rock solid, top of the line subject matter experts on them. Very top level technical skills, knowledge, experience. But they were kind of just fair in their personal qualities that I listed. Now, the likelihood is over time, maybe management put this team together, we're going to put all our rock stars together, and then what happens a little bit over time, because their communication skills aren't so strong. I mean, think about some of those traits: openness, honesty, caring, good listening skills, understanding. That's what makes a good communicator. And if you're weak in those, communications is not going to be so top-notch. So if the communications is not working so well, there's likely to be misunderstandings about what's supposed to be being done. And then there's likely to be missed expectations. And when that starts to happen, people in this relatively lower sense of self, they don't want to be taking responsibility. That was one of the things that they don't have in such high qualities. So they start finger pointing and blaming others and CYA, and maybe the next go around for that team, people are starting to get a little bit more closed up, less open, a little bit more secretive, a little bit less trusting, a little bit less willing to take responsibility because I got hammered last time. And what happens to the effectiveness of that team, it goes down. Despite having the top dogs in the SMEs, the effectiveness of the team will not be what it thought could be. Now flip it the other way and think of a team that has top-notch, strong sense of selfers on it, but they're not that strong as SMEs. Right? They're just fair to middling in that. Now the likelihood is over time, maybe their initial go-around might not be so successful because they lack some of the technical skills, but hey, these are people who support one another, who know about how to provide for what somebody lacks, maybe that they have, to compensate for one another. There are people interested in learning, willing to take risks, and they'll go and find how to learn what they need to learn in order to become more SME-like. And in time, not all that much time, they will become SMEs, and they've already got the personal qualities that are the hard things to get. So now they're sitting real pretty where they're high in both those areas, and the other team is high in the one and growing lower in the other. And if you remember, if you've seen the introductory seminar, the dynamics of a sense of self, if it's not attended to, will tend to move in a direction that it's already leaning. So if it's already high, it'll tend to get higher still. People on that team, the second team I described, that's going to be a fun place to work, right? You're going to be productive. You're going to, all right, we missed some things, but that's just going to make us work harder. We're not pointing fingers, not taking blame. We're accepting responsibility. When you have a place that's fun to work, that place you become more effective in it. Whereas the other side, not so much, and they've become more closed and less willing to take responsibility and on, and the sense of self gets lower. So over time, that team becomes less and less effective. The other team becomes more and more effective. So the key ingredient was the strength of the sense of self. That's what made the difference. So if you want to bring value to the team, the way to do that is to grow your sense of self. Now, what can we use to grow the sense of self? Hey, how about this program? That's the purpose of this program. If you haven't watched the introductory seminar already, I invite you to do that. That lays out what's going to go through this program. And every time I watch it or listen to it, I always learn something new. So it's a worthwhile exercise, even if you have experienced it once. There's ways to grow the sense of self. I talk about two in there, and one of them is working with one another in self-defense techniques. There's physical episodes in this program, and everything about the program is free. Physical episodes in this program, you work with a partner and you build, as is described in the Growing Your Sense of Self introductory seminar, you build your sense of self holistically from a top-down approach. You're nurtured holistically. A second approach to growing a sense of self is what I call a bottom-up approach, and that is you take these traits of a person with a strong sense of self, and I'm going to put a link to those in this video, associated with this video, and you seek to embody those. Now you can do both these exercises with your team members and grow personally with them as you're trying to work and say, I want to be more open. So if you catch me sitting like a bump on a log in a meeting, invite me in and say, hey, you want to be more open, here's an opportunity. Those kinds of things. I feel your support, and yeah, it is something I want to extend myself in, and I'm more likely to try it when I'm getting that kind of encouragement. For me personally. Because as I grow myself personally, it's not only helping the team as I grow my sense of self. Every relationship I have, including the ones on the team, grow out of the relationship I have with myself. So as that grows stronger, my bonds with my coworkers can grow stronger. But hey, it also helps me with spouse, with my parents, with my children, with my friends, with my fellow citizens. I become more valued in all those ways to all those people. So growing a sense of self is a challenging journey. There's probably nothing harder in life than growing the sense of self. But it's also always an opportunity because your self-love, your self-esteem, the two components that make the sense of self, there's no upper bound on either one of those. They're continuums. You can always grow each of them stronger, and when you do that, there's greater value accruing to your life. So this is a challenging journey to grow the sense of self, but it is most rewarding and enjoyable, and it's lifelong. Thank you for your time. Kamsahamnida. Toodles.